All right. So today we have Lisa Pike, Sheehy, and John Goodwin from Patagonia, and they're going to talk about Black Friday and sort of where that came from, Patagonia's version of Black Friday, and what they've learned.
Great. Thanks, Kate. Brief introduction of ourselves. Should we start out with that and then get rolling?
Go for it.
As Kate said, I'm the Vice President of Environmental Activism for Patagonia. I am a proud ex-board member of 1% for the Planet. I was on the board for 9 years. I joined about a year after the organization started. At Patagonia, the area that I oversee is the 1% giving, as well as our campaigns and advocacy and government affairs work. That's sort of a brief snapshot.
Yeah. And I'm John Goodwin. I am the brand creative director at Patagonia, and I oversee our brand and interactive communications. I work very closely with Lisa and her team.
And before we get started, I have to say that Yvon Chouinard wishes he could be here. He knows about the event. I was able to speak with him before coming. You know, he's in the fortunate place in his life where if anything interferes with a fishing trip, the fishing trip basically takes precedence. So unfortunately, I think this coincided with some bone fishing in the Bahamas. But he was so excited, and I'm personally so excited, having been involved in the organization from its inception, that I think this is exactly what Yvon and Craig Matthews envisioned. They wanted to spark a movement. They wanted a revolution in business, and they started 1% for the Planet to show that leadership, something that both of those organizations had been doing for a number of years, and to show what that business model was capable and have other businesses join together and do exactly what we're doing here today, collaborating and sharing ideas and moving the meter forward. So I know he'll be so thrilled about it. And at the end, I'm going to make everybody stand up for a photo so I can show him who's here. But we are here today to talk about what we did on Black Friday, where we gave away 100% of sales in one day to highlight the 1% giving that we do all year long. I just want to show of hands if people are already a little bit familiar of what we did on that day. Okay, so pretty good. Pretty much the target audience, so I kind of expected a lot of hands to be raised. Yeah. But yeah, quick grounding in the 1%. You know, since 1985, so over 35 years of giving. At this point, we've amassed, giving away prior to Black Friday, $74 million to 800 groups around the world. Our focus is on grassroots environmental organizations locally in places where we have employees on the ground and where we're doing business. So a key signature part of our granting program is that we try to include as many of our employees as possible in giving the money away. And so moving into Black Friday and what we did there, we have to back up a little bit, because to talk about the decision that we made on Black Friday, we really have to go back, unfortunately, to the elections. Patagonia was heavily involved in the elections. We'd been running Vote Our Planet campaigns since 2004. So this last election cycle was no different. We went very deeply into communities where we had stores, educating voters, getting them registered, educating them on candidates' environmental voting records, trying to get out the vote, and encourage people to bring their environmental values with them to the voting booth. And we really didn't focus on the executive office. We said you've got to vote up and down the ballot. You've got to look locally at your elected officials who will be making decisions on behalf of the environment. And we really focused on very fundamental environmental issues: air, soil, and water, things that no matter what your partisan stripe, you could relate to. And we did a series of videos. We highlighted communities where we could show examples of where elected officials let people down and how you need to hold them accountable. And one of those was Flint, Michigan. We did a great video with a nonprofit organization called Flint Rising to show that the failure of the elected officials in that community directly resulted in a contamination of the drinking water for the people in those communities. So we were already very emotional about the elections, very invested. And then the day after the elections come, we all know what happened, not just in the executive office, but the congressional offices, mayoral races. The interesting bright spot was, because we focused in communities where we had stores, we looked at ballot initiatives and specific things that were on the ballot that were not candidate specific, and all of those actually came through. So that was one bright spot. But in general, Our emotional state at Patagonia probably mirrored many of you here in this room, right? We were upset, we were depressed, we were confused, we felt angry, but basically we were sad.
Yeah.
We were in a dark place.
Right. And that was, as Michael was saying, we were in crisis mode, and we knew we were in crisis mode leading up to this election. We knew what was at stake. And we were using this type of imagery and language to help evoke that emotional response for an environmental positive action at the voting booth. And as we all know, it didn't really work out. It didn't really work out too much. And we had almost exhausted ourselves with this type of communication. And I won't say it compounded our depression, but it wasn't helping.
That's true. And think, Michael Jagger, actually, I think you visited our offices somewhere within 2 weeks after the elections. And I think last night you said it was almost palpable, the feeling at Patagonia. So we were very emotionally overwrought, and we kept asking ourselves, like all of you probably in the audience and people around the country, what can we do? What are we going to do? And we already were committed in supporting grassroots environmental organizations. So our immediate gut instinct was to go to that place of, you know what, more than ever, it's going to be important for people to engage in civil society and get connected at a local, state, regional level with the nonprofits where we know we're going to be able to move the meter. Because the fight ahead is going to be long, we knew what was at stake, and yet our answer was always dig down, dig local, go to the nonprofits, see how you can be of use, give of not only your money, but your time, your expertise. So we were asking ourselves, what can we do? And going back again to that emotional, dark place, we were looking at Black Friday. And we had a history of making statements on Black Friday, usually around consumerism and anti-consumerism. So we were thinking maybe Black Friday would be a moment to make a statement about what's going on in this country and what we care about, and really put our point of view for environmental issues out there. So in that dark place, I think we came together and said, you know what? Let's do this. Let's close all of our stores. Let's drape them in black. Let's put a manifesto on the door. We'll list all of the local environmental organizations. We'll put a big statement saying, don't shop on this day. Go get involved with these groups. And we were all kind of going, yeah, that feels pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had just come from that dark place where we were just trying to encourage people with the same type of, encouraging people to go act upon their civic duties, connect them to the organizations in their area that they could act upon. It just didn't feel right in this moment. It felt like answering negativity with negativity, even though we were trying to do a positive spin with it. We were not using our business to inspire.
That's right, exactly. And I should have started out with the mission statement, because we were always bringing it back to our mission statement is to make the best product, do the least amount of harm, and use our business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. So how are we really supporting that third pillar? Yeah. So we were circling the airport, but we don't feel like we were landing on it yet. And we were all sort of trudging forward going, yeah, that sounds like the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as Lisa said, we had this request from the owners. They didn't feel like celebrating the holidays. They didn't feel like our core customers would feel like celebrating the holidays. And they're the ones that asked us, shut down and encourage people to go out and act. And while we agreed with the core sentiment there, encourage people to act, we weren't sure that we would be getting the enough positive reaction to people walking up to a closed door at a store
black.
And looking at some organization and going out and contacting them. Like, too many dots to connect there. So this was 8 days before Black Friday?
About.
Yeah, so maybe Wednesday or Thursday before. We were mulling on it. We had come up with a plan. We had come up with some designs. And over the course of a day or a day and a half. The next morning, I believe it was the Friday before, 1 week before, coming in, and those of us that were close to it were just not feeling right, feeling a little down still, like we're answering negativity with negativity, the closing. One of my young designers that morning on the walk-in, who was not working on this, but has been hearing about it, mentions to me in his very soft-spoken voice, say, hey, this just seems very negative. What if we stayed open and just gave it all away? And it's like, Taylor, that's a great idea. I would encourage that. We're not doing that. We're not doing that at all. About an hour later, Lisa, myself, our vice president of marketing, our director of public relations. We're sitting around a table. We were really trying to hone in on what is that exact messaging? How are we going to actually activate people? How are we going to not seem like we're copying REI by closing, et cetera? And it's just, I say this metaphorically, but I wanted to just bang my head on the table. It just wasn't sitting right for me. It was about an hour along of this conversation. And then, the desperation and the kind of emptiness to it, just, you could see it spreading around our table. Meanwhile, we have designers around us frantically working up ideas. And I threw out to the group what Taylor had said to me an hour before. Guys, what do you think about giving it all away? Corey, my vice president of marketing, immediately starts texting Rose. Everybody's just like, yes. I think you get on the phone with Kate 20 minutes later.
I was like, Kate, what would you think if we took the logo, but we adapted it a little bit, just for this one day? Would that be okay?
Yeah, and all of a sudden, I told, the switch flipped. Within 25 minutes, we had buy-in from our CEO, from the owners, from Melinda and Yvonne Chenard, and we were off to the races. This was 1 week before Black Friday.
It was awesome.
So yeah, we met with, I think the next day after that, or later that day, we met with some of Kate's team, and we're like, what do you think if we mess with your logo a little bit? You cool with that? Being, the guy that works in that field, you don't always want, your graphics messed with, but for the cause here, it was good. And one of the rallying things that had us, get on board with this is this already existed. We are already doing 1% every day. This program existed. As Patagonia, we do talk about it, but we haven't talked about it loudly in a long time. And this gave us an opportunity to do this.
I think that's right. I feel like you can't be in Patagonia without seeing the 1%, right? It's on the hang tags, it's in our stores, it's in our catalogs. Many of you have referred to where you saw it, but sometimes when you're so deeply involved, it almost runs in the background and we let the groups and the issues take the forefront, which is right. But I think the other thing that got us so excited about this moment was, here's something we've been looking for as an opportunity to not only engage customers, but to also highlight what we do all year long and the organization of 1% for the planet and really give it a spotlight. It was almost a portal to talk about what we do all year long.
Yeah, it really did become that. So we rolled it out. I think PR started the Sunday, literally 2 days after we had the idea. And our first social media mention of this happened Monday or Tuesday before. We worked through the weekend on getting just a ton of assets, and we rolled this out around the globe in three to 4 days. Everybody was super excited. I was getting emails from our European marketing director that was just talking about the way it was affecting the employees in those different regions. It's the same way it was affecting our employees. People got really excited. People needed something positive.
And most of these countries, just FYI, they have nothing to do with Black Friday. Black Friday is not a thing in Europe, in South America. But again, it was the opportunity to talk about 1% and the groups and the issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great. We started getting a little bit of, we got a lot of buzz when we first threw out, that asset I just showed you around the web. I remember sitting with my wife having dinner at a bar, having some burgers at a bar down the street from us. A couple of days before, it actually launched Black Friday, and I was getting excited. We knew we were onto something. And I had to thank her. We'd moved to California 3 years before. It was my decision that I encouraged her to embark on with me. And I had to thank her for, letting her, this is why. This is why I wasn't looking to move to California. I wanted to come work for Patagonia. And this summarized it all. This encapsulated all of that. So, as you all know, you've all heard of the program, but it was the best organic social performance we've ever had. We trended on Facebook and Twitter that week. We had something like 60,000 new Facebook followers in 2 days. It was the response was impressive. This hashtag went around the world. It was really fun. kind of watching the activity on Instagram and just the web, and hearing people like in England and Australia talk about this and talk about how they're waiting. They're saving, to get up. They're going to save their money for Black Friday when Black Friday isn't a thing for them. Yeah.
And we started to hear from some prominent people. I guess at one point Emma Watson sent it out to her following and on her Facebook, and that really spread far and wide. And then Rose Marcario, our CEO, woke up that morning and Al Gore had tweeted it out, and he had let her know in a text how excited he was, and he was spreading it through his network. So it definitely caught on and had a life of its own, the hashtag.
It was overwhelming. Like the earned media, just from people following it on social and spreading it on social. But just, in the press, the national outlets, sorry, I have to read these, the Associated Press, CNN, Forbes, Fortune, New York Times, Washington Post, et cetera. The outdoor industry with Outside, Gear Junkie, others, EcoWatch, and Tree Hugger. It was just, the media was just going wild, and we knew an energy was buzzing.
I think they were looking for their positive stories too, right? Think of all the things they've been reporting on in the last 3 weeks. And so again, I think we were tapping into a moment and an energy, not just from our company, but from what was happening in the media too.
Yeah, so like when the day finally hit, we put a New York Times ad out there. That wasn't really to move people into the stores or online. The buzz was already out there. I think for Patagonia, that was something we wanted to do to double down on our commitment, to show people, we really mean this. This is just, it's a fairly dead medium, but it's, we felt that it's a way we like to show our commitment when we're putting something out there like this that we believe in. So just a couple more stats on just how effective it was for the commerce in our stores. And once again, we gave all of this away, or are giving. Foot traffic in our retail stores, which, like most retail at that time, it's, our e-com's been going up and retail's been staying flat or going down. Foot traffic was up 17%, which was good.
Black Friday, again, is not a big day for us.
Yeah.
We don't really emphasize it. If anything, we de-emphasize it. So these numbers were big for us.
That's a good point, but sales were up 76% in store. But we've been, in the past few years, we've been promoting worn wear, used. Keep what you have, buy used. Don't buy this jacket. We hadn't really done a commerce play.
And when people came in that day, it was so thrilling for our employees to be able to walk around and say, oh, by the way, if that jacket that's $110, 100%, all of it, $110 will go to these local grassroots groups in their community, and they could walk over and they could show the bulletin board and the environmental zone and talk about our commitment. I mean, the ripple effect we've been talking, how does it affect your employees' morale and engagement? It was so high and so positive for them on such a big consumerism day to actually have a totally different message that they could talk to customers about. And we invited some of the environmental groups in, so they were tabling there as well. So the store had a buzz and an energy that went way beyond what that day represented.
Right. A lot of people knew about the program. There were some informal surveys going on, and they were psyched, and they were coming in. They had waited all week, and they were buying their Christmas gifts. Again, we weren't on sale or anything. This is, buying full price. They could have bought sale Patagonia at many other places that day. People that did come in the doors that didn't know about it, converted even better. That surprise of this, it was really, really nice.
This is another important stat.
Think about that.
So do you know the stat of how we grew our email customer list by? I mean, there's a lot of numbers out there, but it was striking how many were first-time customers, new to the brand, never had bought from us before.
Right. And a lot of these customers, they're now in our communication funnels, and many of them are taking actions beyond just buying through ways we ask people to participate, whether it's not this campaign or that campaign, or what we're doing with public lands and Bears Ears and whatnot. We've seen a surprisingly high metric there with this new group. So This is all leading up to it did better than we thought. Again, while Black Friday was always a good day for us, it was never the day that we pinned everything on. We kind of spread evenly throughout the whole holiday season. Where, like any company, the holiday season is important. So we'd publicly stated in the press, because as we were doing this, Corley, our director of PR, had to tell people, what were we expecting to give away that day? What were we expecting to add to our 1% fund? $2 million. To be fair and to be completely honest, we knew that was low ball.
2 to 3, we thought,
Yeah,
maybe.
we thought, 3.
I mean, that's based on history. That was what we did the year before.
Our projections were like 3.2 to 3.5 on the high end. By 9 a.m. on the West Coast, we had surpassed last year completely, globally. By mid-afternoon, Rose, our CEO, called Yvonne and said, I've got good news and bad news. The good news, it's going really well. The bad news, it's going really, really, really well.
Not being in sales myself, I was like, do we have enough inventory? I was like, are we going to
We
run out
all
of
were.
product?
I had taken the day off. I was spending the day in Ojai with my wife, and we were all on this massive text chain, just seeing this number go up. Yvonne was okay with that, by the way. But yeah, this is a conservative number. We exceeded this. It was a fun time to be at Patagonia, and I can't underscore enough. And from what the last panelists were talking about, what does this mean to the employees, to the workers? This rally, this lifted everybody up. Everybody was working on this. Like, we did it for 1 week. The whole marketing department had to jam. Yeah, and then around the world, getting up in stores, our VDG group, in stores. It was an impressive show, and it was nice to push stuff aside and all join forces on one effort.
And it totally made us all emotionally turn the corner. We were
Yeah.
ready to fight. We had a war chest now. It was game on. We were ready.
Yeah. So what did this do? We doubled our yearly expectation, more than doubled.
Yep.
We were going to be about 8 million.
Yep. So for the last fiscal year, our 1% would have been 8 million. So more than doubled what we now have to give away in the next 18 months.
No. So yeah, that's a lot of work for Lisa's team.
As you all know, that's not easy to do.
Right?
So maybe we stop here
Yeah.
and see if there's questions, or I don't know how long we went on there, Kate, but
That was
you tell
perfect.
us. Because we could just keep talking about it.
None of us were tracking the time while we were listening to that. That was a great story. So thank you for that. And I think actually this is a great question. I think there's a lot of curiosity about, and I'm sure you think about this too, do you do that again? How do you follow up on that?
Do you want to take that one?
Well, we'd love to pose that question to the audience because we are grappling with that. We are asking ourselves that exact question. Do we annualize this? Do we make this an ongoing campaign that continues in perpetuity? Do we celebrate the uniqueness of it and the right timing and the right elixir of all these things that came together and create and decide that it's a one-off and that we look for what the next exciting idea is to do? We don't really know. So at some point, it would be fun to hear when we get into the real Q&A from the audience, your thoughts on what you think we should do.
It's a hot debate around campus right now.
I think we should get into the real Q&A with the audience, because that is the real Q&A. So let's hear it.
Sure.
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah,
And I don't know where the mic is. What's that?
It's a quick question.
It's a quick question, which I can repeat. So
It was just how contingent do you think that was upon bad news
So-
versus it being sort of anti-consumerism or Black Friday?
So the question is, how contingent was the success of this particular Black Friday on the bad news of the election versus being sort of Black Friday specific
I mean, I can only assume, just because of how we were feeling and what we were reading, that and the conversations we were all having, that it was something that was positive and people wanted to partake in it, and it was very directly related to the elections. The timing was just so close.
My answer is it was 100% related. We were pushed into a corner, and not just by what was being asked upon us. We had a campaign. We were rolling out a campaign that we had already had going on about asking people to support the National Arctic Wildlife Refuge. You know, not as sexy as this, but important nonetheless. You know, and part of communications that we still have going on with, you know, protecting the public lands. And that was already established, and you'll still see remnants of that in the Boulder story here. But if our backs weren't against the wall, I don't think this would have happened.
Yeah, the idea for sure. I mean, if the elections had gone a different way, we wouldn't be standing here talking about it for sure.
And I think that's actually a really important point for all of us to think about. I mean, Michael really emphasized that crisis moment, and I think we sometimes, as the positive, optimistic people that we are reluctant to sort of name the crisis that we're in for what it is. And I think, you know, this is a great example of, not that we want to have moments like November 8th on an annual basis, but I think those clear moments of crisis for the environment that bring it to light are very important to use for what they are, which are moments to take action in pretty powerful ways. And we need to remember that, you know, we do have that crisis now. We will have that, you know, crisis for a long time if we don't act. So I think that's an important thing for us to remember. Steve, you have a question here, and then Trina.
So why wouldn't you do it again? Is it the cost of, why wouldn't you do it again? Is it the cost of the inventory that you're giving away ultimately? I mean, I would think it'd be worth it in the advertising and the free press and so forth.
I think, you know, at Patagonia, the culture is you top what you've done. We're not one to rest on laurels. So we would never want to just, oh, yeah, that was successful. Let's just do that one more time. You know, we're entrepreneurial. We're always tweaking it, making it better, taking away, adding to. So maybe we do it again, but is what's the next level, right? Or what's the next level of an engagement on it? Is it joining with others? Is it having a stronger action component to it beyond just that purchase? I think we're in that mode right now where we don't want to just say, oh, yeah, that was successful. Let's just repeat it. Yeah. We want to do it better.
We want to add on to it, but there's a danger in that we're wrestling with, because this worked because it was stupid simple. But what it did prove is that people do want to vote with their dollars. We made this easy. People were going to be shopping over the holidays anyways. And yes, people did probably buy more than they would have intended or bought with us instead of somebody else. But adding some sort of layer to that is, again, we're wrestling with that back at the office, because we don't want to just do it again. We want to make it better, but still make it easier.
Trina, and then Scott.
A comment and then a question. The comment is, I agree with you guys, at least what you, Lisa, were saying. I think you caught lightning in a bottle. And I'm not sure that you could replicate that going forward. And Patagonia has a reputation for doing these incredibly creative, very nimble, sort of back into it marketing things that seem to work out. So why would you just do it again? From a business standpoint, too, you would train your customers to just wait for that day. And why would you want to do that? The question is Taylor still working in design? Or has he moved to marketing?
Taylor got a raise.
All right, so we have a few questions over here in the pew on the far side there. And I'll repeat your question while the mic is making its way over. Yeah, go ahead.
Shop from the newspaper. My question is, I think sometimes as consumers we give money, or everyone says, where does my tax dollars go? Where does my consumer build upon a campaign to show where exactly the 10 million are going, and then maybe continue to have days where, 1 million went here and and highlight that so that people can really see, maybe they went in on anger, but out of anger came good, and kind of build on that positivity part of it?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question, because I did want to highlight, I encourage every brand to think of creative ways that they can have a moment, whether it's Inauguration Day or the day they join 1% for the Planet, maybe, where they want to do something different and creative and extra special to shine a light on what they do all year long. And we were very purposeful to not get excited and say, well, whatever we raise, we will launch X new program. And again, this might work for your brand. You may have something that you've been wanting to do, so you want to use it as a moment to galvanize people to shop with you, to then raise money for something specific. But what we did was say, again, back to 1% for the Planet, we wanted to highlight what we do all year long and have for years. So we said publicly, what we will do with the money is we will get it on the ground to the grassroots groups. That's where we feel true and lasting change can happen. And we will bolster the environmental movement because it needs it now more than ever. And again, we tied it back to the elections and the dire state of the crisis. And the first thing we did was say we are going to double the size of our annual grants. So on average, our grants are small. They're $7,000, which to a small local group means a lot. They're now $15,000. So again, we were perpetuating our messages of what we felt were important, and that dovetailed with how customers could get involved with those groups and lend their skills and sets to getting engaged in their communities. But I think it's a great point. And to follow up on that, to be fair, there are a few areas where we've wanted to expand, and we are using this as an opportunity. One of those is in regenerative agriculture. We have now Patagonia Provisions. We're in the food business, and we're interested in elevating that conversation and growing the grassroots around that. So that's one area. Another area is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we've been funding environmental justice groups, but to a small degree. And so we're making a commitment to grow that campaign and grow that area of our giving. So even within it, we did do a few things like that where we were able to highlight where we're making a bigger emphasis.
Right. And we already were planning on some new programs to connect our consumers to our grantees. This happened in the middle of that, and I think it, not to get too corporate speak on talking to your customers, but it started that conversation. It front staged that movement. So at the end of those graphics that we put out in social, advertising 100%, we always ended with get involved with a group near you. And we had an okay way of finding those groups in your area on Black Friday that we also made that week. And it was not super great. But
It's a map where you can see. And
yeah. But we are trying to move towards connecting our community, which is our brand employees and our ambassadors, to our customers and prospective customers with our grassroots NGOs and whatnot. So we are going to be a little bit more purposeful and meaningful, and also being transparent with these groups and kind of helping people get to where are we funding, information on these groups, what groups our stores are funding, but also what types of categories, topics are we funding towards, in an effort to connect our customers to our grantees, but also create community amongst our grantees themselves. So that's in progress now.
Great. So we had a couple more questions over here. We'll try and cluster them so the mic can make it in time. So right here on the end, right on the end there, I think, yeah.
Thanks, Jess. You actually answered one of my questions. It was what was the size of the grant, and if the amount that you received during this campaign changed your giving strategy from being the smaller grants and kind of random acts of restoration rather than more of a focused investment. So that you answered that. How do you report your impact, and is it just in the dollars and the number of groups, or are there other measures that you're looking at and talking about?
That's a good question. It's always a good question for funders, right? How do we report back out our impact? And we're storytellers at Patagonia, so we tend to not go into every single organization. We have 800 of them, but figure out ways that we can tell the stories of success. Because I also think, we have a problem in the environmental movement. We're always talking about the problems, the issues, and where not necessarily the wins and the success stories. So we produce an environmental initiatives booklet every year, which is basically our annual report, our granting report, a foundation analysis of the year. And we highlight specific groups and issues that saw movement, even if they're small wins to the ultimate goal. So that's a way we ladder back that information. Because our grant program is focused on these smaller grants, we try to ask very little of the grantees in terms of reporting back. Here's the money, go do the work. We have a partnership with you. We trust that you're doing the work in the way that you need to. I don't want you to produce a 10-page report for me. That's not a good use of your time, right? You're a small nonprofit. You're probably run mostly by volunteers, maybe a couple paid staffers. That's not how we do it. So we're light on that.
All right, next question.
It's more of an idea for you. So when Kate said that November 8th was a dark day in history, I thought, well, why don't you guys do this again on November 8th this year? See if you can make a statement that way.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'll write that down.
That's a good one. In the middle here? Right, yeah, right there. Sorry, front middle.
I should add while the mic is going around, another fun part of this that I didn't mention was reaching out to the grantees in advance.
Oh, yeah.
So we sent them all a letter. We told them exactly what we were doing. We shared all of the assets so they could tweet about it. They could send it out. And they got so excited because they were a part of this. We eagerly talk about all the things that we did, but they were a major part of getting the word out, getting excited. We told them, spiff up your websites because people are going to be going to them. And in fact, poor 1% of the planet, I think we crashed their site by 9 a.m.
Or you guys took it down in anticipation?
Yes. Overloaded. We pre-crashed it.
But that was a critical piece, and again, a really engaging one that was fun to do with the grantees. Sorry.
Couple things. I agree that if you do it again on Black Friday and you don't get more than 10 million, you're going to give yourself a real bad black eye that just confirms that Trump should have been elected by the people that feel that the planet's not important enough. That's one thought. Another thought is somebody said something this morning about there's 3 individual people who've done 1% for the planet out of their income. I mean, that sounds pretty easy to do. If you make $50,000 a year, that's only $500, and I think most of the Patagonia shoppers are probably spending that on other things. So maybe you could drive with some sort of another promotion like that. You come in, not only will we donate to the nonprofits, but we'll also sign you, if you sign up as an individual 1% for the planet member, we'll also give you a free something.
Right.
Yeah, I like that idea.
I do too.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
We were talking about the personal giving just the other day, but that's a nice spin on it. I like that.
It's a recruitment day.
I mean, one other idea, and something that we've all been talking about, is how do businesses collaborate with each other. So I'm wondering if, with all of the resources and assets and experience that you have as one of the leading 1% companies, maybe if your team was driving a campaign and that we could all jump on, and you keep it very secret until the moment, but where we could plan ahead and participate, that might be a great way for us to, rather than just donating cash, use our resources and our expertise and learn from you, which is what we're all looking to do.
What does the room feel about that? Because there's been a lot of that exact conversation at Patagonia.
Yeah, I think Sunskis immediately did it on Inauguration Day. And we've heard from a couple of other companies that maybe it's something they're considering. So I think there's some power there to think about for sure.
Let's round table about it.
Great. We have one back here.
Hi there, Whitney Flynn, based here in Boulder. You guys have thought a lot, more than any company in the room perhaps, on the most meaningful way to have impact. And you've again and again reinforced your commitment to the grassroots level. And I'm wondering how in today's country, in today's world, you think about national level campaigns and making progress in the courts and other avenues, and if you think that will ever be part of the Patagonia story, or how you're encouraging partners in the business community and elsewhere to have an impact at that level.
Yes, you're exactly right. And because of the way things have gone, it's actually become part of our narrative, even though that's not our core DNA. So we after the Black Friday, sort of announced our own first 100 days plan based on what was going on environmentally. So we said two things are going to happen. We're going to have to continue to support the grassroots, because that's where we'll see proactive movement, states taking initiatives on climate change, local governments still moving forward with Obama's Clean Power Plan, even if it's being gutted at the national level. So you're going to see you're proactive at the state and local level, but then we can't ignore what's happening at a federal level, and we have to mount a defense, because we know Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, Antiquities, Circula, NEPA, these things are all going to be under attack, or at least that's what we've been told, and now we're starting to see it actually in these first 100 days. So we are putting some resources behind groups that are working on a national level just to hold the line on the progress that we've made. So while we have a philosophy, you can't be out of step with what's actually happening. And we are going to direct some resources to those national campaigns to hold the line on the laws that we need to keep into place. Right. And the other thing you definitely touched up on is tactically, where do we need to put energy? And legal funds is huge. So we have a huge a pot of money that we've set aside to support the nonprofits that will be bringing lawsuits in this environment, and also thinking about what lawsuits we might even be party to pushing forward, because that's a tactic that in this environment is going to be a tool that all the groups and the movement's really going to have to utilize.
We're currently running a campaign around the defense of the Bears Ears National Monument, Obama's last use of the Antiquities Act. And we do feel that that act is under some danger in current times. And we've been running a communications program campaign directing people to call the new Secretary of Interior, Zinke. And we do know from some of his staffers that it's been cutting through a little bit, and nothing's happened yet. So,
Lisa, this is Justin from Care 2. Hi. I just happened to pop in, and I was wondering, just in context of this, the last question, could you talk about the Care 2 story a little bit? Relative to the Arctic campaign that we did together.
Yeah, so we partnered with Care 2. You should be the one to tell it.
You know it better. I'll tell the other side of it.
Well, it was wonderful to come together with Care 2, and we did this incredible film that highlighted the Gwich'in. And the Arctic Refuge is a campaign that we've been very, very long involved in from the early days, sort of a connection between our owners and founders with the Muries and the Marty Muri story and protecting that area. But it was a great opportunity to work with Care 2, with texting, with calling, with all of the technology that you have to bear to mobilize and turn our customers into activists on behalf of that issue. Do you want to fill in some of the spaces that I'm leaving out?
Sure. So the context was we've got a mobilized audience of about 40 million people, and we were able to kind of flip the switch. And interestingly, the whole Black Friday campaign kind of delayed that whole strategy.
Right.
So that was interesting, because we had to scramble and figure out how are we going to mobilize people in a condensed time frame. So we were on the hook to drive about 50,000 signatures around this Save the Arctic campaign. That was also promoting this wonderful short film you guys had helped to produce. And it was crazy, but we actually ended up getting 95,000 signatures. It was very exciting. And then we got a bunch of major press out of that, collaborating with your PR team and our PR team. So we're seeing more and more at Care 2 the opportunities for brands like Patagonia to take a leadership position on core progressive issues. Another great example that just popped up, John Foraker was trying to help save this incredible urban garden in LA, the Gangsta Gardener. And we happened to meet at Expo, and I called John. I said, hey, do you want to start a petition? And he's like, sure, I'm in. We're all over it. They launched a petition, and we got about 60,000 signatures on that over the course of about 10 days. It helped push their crowdfunding campaign over the edge. They're in negotiations with being able to buy the garden now, and it ended up on CBS News right before 60 Minutes with John Foraker and Nell Newman from Newman's Own. So I think what you've taken a lead on is really fascinating, and there's an opportunity for smaller brands as well to take that leadership position for the right moments.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for smaller brands too, it's important. You should reach out. Care2 is such a leveraging organization, because I'm sure some of you are saying, well, that's great, but you have 1 million people on your email list. So of course you can get 90,000 signatures. Well, we couldn't have done it without Care2. You know, they had the resources and the knowledge and the wherewithal how to turn that on. So those partnerships of working with other nonprofits that can really leverage the voice of your customers on behalf of a certain issue and bond together with other organizations that are working on that is so powerful. And those resources are out there. You just have to seek them out.
So I know there's some other questions, but we're going to actually stop for a break. I want to offer you guys a chance for a last word, and then I want to bottle up this pent-up good energy to bring to the campaign work that we'll be doing in our last session.